Hello, everyone, and happy holidays wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us here at USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn KERBECK, and it is my honor and privilege to be able to broadcast to you. Thank you for taking us into your homes, into your office, into your car, wherever it is that you watch us or listen. It really has been an incredible time as we approach our 1 year anniversary, January of 2023, and we couldn't have done it without you. Our show today is The Wise Ones, and we are featuring Leonard Moore. As he said, just call me Lenny. And before we bring him out, I want to recognize an incredible team member who is a very dear friend. I just said to him backstage, I feel like I haven't seen you in forever because we work so closely together on all of the books that we are releasing out into the world, and of course on this platform. His name is Red O'Loughlin, and not only is he the star of this show, but he's one of our expert presenters on Talking Heads, which is coming up immediately after this program. He's also an elevated listener, which is so important to me. It's actually the most important thing I think that I do on this earth is teaching people how to listen at an elevated level, and Red embraced that. He is my book coach for all four of my books that I have that have all been either Amazon #1 bestsellers or Amazon #1 new releases, all as an tribute to him and the work that he does. He is a publisher. He is a longevity strategist and expert in so many areas. And he is also going to be starting his own show here on this platform about mental health awareness. He and I are doing a show that was going to be a 6-part series. It's now 12 on food and our emotions. And as I say every time, he's a great guy. He's down to earth. He's humble. He means everything. Let's welcome him, Red O'Loughlin. Hello.
Just when I didn't think I would turn red anymore, you managed to do it. So maybe we're not meeting often enough because regardless, thank you so very much for your very kind words, Dr. Jacalyn.
You're welcome. And to your beautiful wife, Marilyn, hello as well. Happy holidays.
I'm sure she's downstairs watching. It's one of those things that she does do because I get feedback after every episode, and I'm getting less and less of the constructive feedback and more of, hey, that was pretty good. So I am learning, and you're a great teacher in that regard. So please keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you. And of course, I don't know if I've announced this yet, but you are one of our President's Club award winners, one of our 2022 VIP award winners. So that's a very small circle of people, and you have to really put it out there into the universe, into the world, education, information, hope, and inspiration. So congratulations to you, Red.
Well, thank you so very much. So 2022 members, is that what you said?
It's the President's Club. Yeah. No, I didn't say that. No. And you also are the recipient of the Role Model of the Year award. So you really have made a difference on this platform to everybody watching and listening, and also to me personally. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jacalyn. Lenny Moore is a good friend of mine. We met in the military. He's an aviator like I am. Different aircraft, but basically we share a lot of the same experiences. I was fortunate enough to have Lenny come over while I was on active duty in Germany, and we got a chance to do a little traveling around, spent some time in the Czech Republic, went and spent a lot of time in the what they call the mineral thermes over there. Just a really neat time. He has an amazing background in a lot of different areas. And from my background, I did 4.5 years on active duty. I did 20 years in the reserves. I went back on active duty for 6 years, spent a couple of years in the New York area, a couple in the Bay Area, California, my last 2 years in Stuttgart, Germany. And the people that I met back during that time, I could have this whole show be nothing but military, but that's not the purpose of the show. The purpose is that have a lot of shared experience in a lot of regards. And many times when I run into a military guy, if they're there all the time, their focus is very narrow. But Lenny has the entrepreneurial spirit, the ability to solve people's problems, to get things done. And so I thought he'd be a great person for this particular show. And so he said, yes, like any other naval aviator would say when I asked him, please. So anyway, let me introduce Lenny at this time, and please join us on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, Lenny, the Wise Ones.
Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. Thank you, Red. it's a pleasure to be on your show today.
Thank you so much for being here. And I love the fact that you two actually met and traveled around together. That's so cool.
Oh, it was absolutely spectacular. Going to Germany was one of the bucket list items on my list since I took 3 years of German in high school. I always wanted to go there, so it was a rare treat to spend it with Red, and he's such a wealth of information and knowledge. It just made it that much easier to enjoy that trip.
It's beautiful. So, what is it about people in the military that is just, aside from, thank you for your service, it's just so enticing to meet somebody from the military, especially aviation, because you're so disciplined and structured and trustworthy, I feel is the word that comes to mind.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Being in the military has been the defining moment of my life, and it was something that I always thought I would want to do. In the back of my mind, it all started when I was a little kid, just building airplane models and imagining being in the cockpit one day. Unfortunately for me, at about age 14, my eyes went bad. Because of that same passion of spending so much time working on models. One of the projects I'd taken on was actually building a large ship, USS Constitution. And in doing so, I spent hours really close up to my subject work, and it was very detailed work. But I didn't know about exercising your eyes and looking distant at various times. So I'd spend hours just locked in on a very close item. And in doing so, I really ruined my vision. And I'm sure Red would share some thoughts about how to improve your vision as well. But in hindsight, I recognized that was the moment that I really did kind of mess up my eyes, which meant that I wasn't going to be able to be a pilot in the military. But fortunately for me, I was able to do a little bit of research and found out that there was a back door to flying in the aircraft of the military. And that was, as long as you were 2400 correctable to 2020, you could still get a backseat position or a side bombardier navigator position in the military aircraft if that's what you wanted to do. You would not accrue hours that would be creditable to an airline, but it would still be certainly a fun career, and you can make an entire career out of it. And that's what I ended up doing.
Lenny, before the days of computers, I was sitting my second day in the military in boot camp at NAMI in Pensacola, the Naval Aviation Medical Institute, and they read a message came out that day saying that effective immediately, all pilots would have to put 5 years in after they got their wings. So I asked the question, what about naval flight officers? They said, no, still 3.5 years. And so unbeknownst to everybody in the world, I changed my designator from an AOC to an NAOC with a pen. I had all my records in front of me. Nobody else had anything. They weren't in the computer, but I changed my designator from a 1315 to a 1325. And that particular moment, the Navy had one less pilot and one more naval flight officer. And that was by my own direction. I had good enough, I still do, that I don't have a problem. But at that point in time with Vietnam and everything going on, I just felt like 3.5 years is probably more than enough. Little did I ever realize that I put 31 plus years in before it was all done.
And Dr. JACALYN, and for everybody online, that is such a rarity for somebody to actually have 2020 and by their own desire select into navigation. I would call that a 1 in a million, that little story right there. Most people get into the navigation side of the ledger because they don't have the perfect eyesight, or they lose that eyesight early in their military education, and that's weeded out by that group, Naval Aviation Medicine, or NAMI as he called it, and then you get forced into the navigator side. So that is an unusual story, to be sure.
And as most of us in the aviation world, we all have unusual stories. And I know you have more than a couple yourself. Is there anything that you would like to share with us?
Well, sure. First thing, and this would be, we call these foot stompers in the Navy. Whenever there's a lesson to be learned, and as the talk goes on, but it's one of the takeaway points, this would be one of the foot stompers. My path to getting into the military was an unusual one. If I had known better in high school what was going to be required for me to gain an ROTC scholarship, I would have really hit the SATs hard. I did do great academically at my school. I was over a 4.0, but irrespective of that, the SATs is really what drives your ability to win a Reserve Officer Training Corps, or ROTC scholarship to one of the universities. But I would share this with people who have kids or grandkids that are interested in possibly matriculating into the service and having it paid for on the taxpayer dollar. In my case, because I had missed out on this opportunity to be awarded the scholarship, and because the bar was so high to get the scholarship in high school, at my time it was 14 out of 1,600 on the SAT. I was nowhere near that, unfortunately, but in spite of that, I did get accepted into University of California, Berkeley, and I actually went to the ROTC unit, long hair and all, and said, "Hey, I want to fly jets." And they said, "Well, you're going to have to matriculate into what we call the college program, which is basically a non-scholarship, voluntary program to learn how to become an officer, learn how to march, learn how to conduct yourself as an officer." And I did one semester of that, but in the process, I kept my GPA over a 3.0. So here's the foot stomper. They offered me, unsolicited, a full 3.5-year scholarship, because it turns out these ROTC scholarships that are so difficult to be awarded in high school, that money is left begging for people to fill that opportunity after a lot of these people are also in competition for full ride academic scholarships. And a lot of times they'll win both, and then they'll take the full ride scholarship, and that money goes begging for a body. So that's how I was able to have 3.5 of my 4 years paid for by Uncle Sam. In my case, this was in the mid 80s. I actually was required to sign on the dotted line for 6 years after wings of a commitment. So with the time I'd be at Pensacola learning the trade, it would put me out at about 8 or 9 years anyway. So I was already halfway to a 20-year career just by my obligation to accept that. But that's how it all worked out for me. So the foot stomper that I would want everybody to kind of understand is you can have a free 4-year, well, almost 4-year college education, relatively easy. The secret is getting into an ROTC unit or into any university that has an ROTC unit or has a crosstown component where you would be able to travel on like Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays to do your drill to that hub campus that has the ROTC unit. The other little caveat I would tell folks, at least here in the States, there was, whenever I went through, there was a maximum scholarship amount of $12,000 for Air Force and Army to be awarded on a yearly basis. Here's the key. The Navy and the Marine Corps, at the time that I went through, there was no maximum amount. So we had people that, for instance, were going to Stanford University, a $250,000 education back then, I'm sure it's more now, that were getting their scholarships paid for 100%, plus $200 a month, plus books and tuition, plus uniforms. And that was all paid for because they had chosen to go in the Navy, and they'd give full ride scholarships. So that was something I definitely wanted to share with the audience.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I want to go back to school.
You use the term foot stopper, and literally the instructor, if they're putting out a particular phrase or word, they would stomp their foot because you would see that word or phrase in an exam later on. And so it was meant to be that if the instructor is stamping his foot or beating the podium, it was a hint. It was a hint. It was a clue. Remember this. But you've flown in some pretty interesting aircraft.
I have. All through training, we all kind of went through the same types of basic aircraft. So Red and I probably both flew in the T-34 or some version of it, the basic, just learning how to navigate, aviate, communicate, engines, weather. Once you get through that, then it gets a little more specific. Whenever I was going through the curriculum to be an F-14 backseater, which if you ever saw Top Gun, Goose, that's what I was. I was the backseater guy. But in the process of doing that, you'll get some different types of aircraft. It was a Cessna Citation II, where I actually did my radar work and learned how to do that. We finished up basic fighter maneuvers, or BFM as we called it, in a aircraft which is now no longer flown, but that's the story of my life. They no longer fly Tomcats either, but we flew in the T-2C Buckeye, and then we also flew in A-4s for the basic Skyhawk that we learned how to do some of these basic maneuvers. And then after we finished up the what we called scope work, or learning how to run a intercept on an aircraft, airborne intercept, after we finished up that, you graduated from your curriculum there in Pensacola. You were commissioned an ensign out of college, but here you get your wings of gold. We were very proud to finally get through that curriculum. In my case, it took a little bit longer because I ended up having believe it or not, a volleyball accident where I broke my knee, and it set me back about a year. But in spite of that, fortunately for me, the Navy had put enough money into my early education for flying that they felt like it was worth the investment to have me hang around Pensacola for an extra year to get through the flight training, which I did. And then it was off to Miramar to fly Tomcats. But if I could share with you, I don't know if there's a way to share a video from YouTube. It is public domain, but I could actually share a video and tell a story about that, if that's a possibility, Red. Is that something that we can share?
If you can you drop the link into the private chat?
I sure can.
Perfect. And who's the owner of the video?
Lee Smith is the publisher, and it is on YouTube. And he's basically republishing public domain from the aircraft carrier. This is called Platt Video. I'm not sure what Platt stands for, but it is basically a camera that's inside of the flight carrier deck, and they can actually see the aircraft on its approach. Very unique that it's able to do that. And I'll go ahead and drop that link right now.
So okay, in the meantime, we're going to take a commercial break, Red, right? I think that's a good idea now.
Okay, why don't we do that, take a little bit early, and then when we come back, you can talk a little bit in preference about the little bit of difference between landing on an aircraft carrier and landing on an 18,000-foot runway someplace in the middle of California.
Okay, sounds great.
Sounds good. Okay, we're going to take a break and hear from some of our sponsors. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the Wise Ones and Lenny.
Thank you.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Story Garden. Your host, Diane Boehm. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Diane Floyd Boehm tells wonderful stories that warm the heart, spark the imagination, and unite people and families across generations. For children, Diane's Harry the Camel connects with all of us who've ever wondered how different our lives might have been if only we'd been born something better, like a wonderful horse instead of an ordinary camel. In the end, we all learn along with Harry that there's nothing better than just being yourself. Diane's Little Girl in the Moon looks down on earthbound children and wonders if they know she's just like them. A story of love, home, and the bond between mother and daughter, its powerful theme that we're each of us different yet all of us the same plants a seed in children that promises to blossom within a loving and trusting grown-up. Diane's new biography, Rise, recounts the experiences of her grandmother, Ruby, to reveal the hidden strength of the human spirit. Ruby's story inspires all of us to become the best versions of ourselves. You'll find all of Diane's delightful books and much more at dianefloydboehm.com. Visit dianefloydboehm.com. That's dianefloydboehm.com.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
everyone, and welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio. A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors. We really do appreciate you. Our show is The Wise Ones with our special guest, Lenny Moore. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back, Red. Hello.
Always good to return.
I'm glad that you did. And let's welcome back Lenny. Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Red, you had asked Lenny to tee something up when we got back. What was that?
He has the experience of landing on aircraft carriers. When I had choices, I chose an aircraft too big to land on a carrier. So we were always had to land on land every night. But his aircraft was a little smaller. And so he had the opportunity to land on carriers. I thought that might be of some interest to those people that occasionally see a YouTube video, but were never actually in a seat to take off or land on a rolling deck at night and whatever. So I'm sure he has lots of stories, but tell us a little bit about landing or taking off on an aircraft carrier.
Sure. So I've actually sent a couple of links in the chat if you're interested in actually seeing these. But the first link actually corresponds with literally my first day on an aircraft carrier. I was on the USS Ranger. It's a long since disestablished aircraft carrier, a steam-powered aircraft carrier. But as I started out my career, I was what we call a nugget, which is essentially somebody who has no experience, has never been to the fleet, has never gone out to sea. So as a nugget, you had the joy of carrying all your belongings in a sea bag and walking aboard the carrier Brow at North Island. And then you would put out to sea with the aircraft carrier with the anticipation that one of the senior aviators who's already done a sea tour will land aboard the aircraft carrier after they do their day qualifications, which typically is about 3 touch and goes and then 1 arrested landing, or 4 total for your day qualification. And then you'll do something similar at night to get your night qualification to land on the carrier. These qualifications, in my case, would happen right off the coast of California. So we're just literally steaming 15 miles just past Point Loma out of San Diego. And all of a sudden, here comes the aircraft marshaling overhead, ready to start bouncing on the aircraft carrier. And in the example of the first video, I was waiting on aircraft 104. I won't say their names, but a couple of squadron mates, were senior squadron mates, would land after they had made the touch and goes with their hook up. They would deploy the hook down, catch one of the 4 cross-deck pendants that are in the back of the aircraft carrier, and land. And if you've ever looked at an aircraft carrier, you'll notice that the runway is actually canted off 11 degrees to the port or starboard. I'm sorry, to the port to the left. And the reason for that is that if there is a miss of the wires, they will immediately, the pilot will always put the throttles to full military or afterburner as required to have enough power to power the aircraft off the flight deck and go flying again and try it again. Before that invention, there was a straight deck carrier where you had 9 or 10 wires across the deck, and by gosh, you better catch one of those wires, get into the wires, or you would risk running into the aircraft that are parked in the front of the aircraft carrier. So you can see how much safer that was. But in the example of this video, as luck would have it, again, this is literally my very first day aboard an aircraft carrier. I'm waiting for aircraft 104 to come aboard. They made a picture-perfect landing, and as they made their approach, a disaster happened. But before I go into that, I would just say that I would say is something we always said in carrier aviation, which is you want to make your adjustments early on, because you cannot make those wide adjustments either for attitude, all that stuff, aggressively early on in the flight. So if you're endeavoring to do anything, whether it's entrepreneurial or health-wise or anything that you are trying to do, I believe it's always important to make a strong go of it early on and make the radical course correction early and then fine-tune later. It's just much easier to do it that way. So that was the second foot stomper I would share with you. But in the example of the video here, I was waiting in a place we call Pry Fly, which is down on the flyer. And the goal here was for the aircraft to make its final approach, land, be arrested in that approach. Then the aircraft would be taxied off to the starboard side of the aircraft carrier. Then they would turn off the left engine, which is where the ladder is. They would open up the canopy. Out would come the aircrew that just landed, and in would go myself and my pilot. And then we would go and do our touch and goes and arrested landing. So we would get qualified as well and be prepared for our fleet tour. So things didn't go according to plan. The previous crew made a perfect approach. They landed on the 3-wire, which is considered the wire you want to hit. But unbeknownst to them, there was a weld fault in the wire down under the deck where it plays out on a hydraulic barrel, essentially. And that wire broke the weld and it parted. So what happened was, as the aircraft was pulling the wire, it slowed the aircraft down to about 50 knots, which is far too slow to go flying again, even with military power. But it's too fast to stop from going over the flight deck, which is exactly what the aircraft did. So as I watched the aircraft I was supposed to switch into on my first day on an aircraft carrier fall off and go into the Pacific Ocean, I saw the 2 parachutes come out, thank goodness, and they were able to be retrieved by the standing helicopter that was waiting for just such an event. And I looked as our ship drove past the 2 tails of the Tomcat sitting in the Pacific Ocean. I started to question my career choices, but fortunately, I had no choice, and I had to work through it anyway. But that's what that first video is. And I've also included a link on a second video. I always call this my career bookends. Although I only did 1 fleet tour out on Westpac, I had 2 interesting stories that happened. So now, fast forward, I've gone through flying the Operation Southern Watch, which was the enforcement of the no-fly zone in southern Iraq. And we also did some operations in conjunction with Navy SEALs where we would fly over Somalia. So I had a few things that I was able to take care of in terms of combat missions, and I was able to accrue an air medal out of that. But the main thing was that at the end of that cruise, now I'm the senior Rio, and we start training our new pilots that have come out of Pensacola, Florida, and now they're going to be the Nuggets, and they're going to start the whole process all over again. And I was flying with a pilot that was having a real struggle shore-based, trying to bring the Tomcat aboard. But before we were even out at the aircraft carrier, you learn how to land first on a painted box on the Miramar 2-4 right. And then there's another, when you really want to get varsity, you go out to a San Clemente Island. It's a island off the coast of California that has a carrier aviation box painted on it. It also has the Fresnel lens, which would allow you to figure out your attitude. And we practiced at night landing, and it did not go well. Pilot was just struggling behind the aircraft all night, and I tried to give him some advice, but it just wasn't getting through. I know he was overwhelmed for sure. So when we landed, this was actually my last night flight. So when we landed, I went to the operations officer, who's the division head, who's in charge of making decisions about pilot performance and Rio performance. And I told him, I said, this gentleman's struggling a little bit. You may want to get in his back seat and just fly with him a little bit and make sure that he gets comfortable in the seat, because he's far from comfortable. No one is as a beginner, but man, this was a little bit more than was usual. And I left the squadron at that point and went to teach ROTC at the University of Pennsylvania. But 30 days after I left, this same aviator was now doing carrier qualifications nighttime out on the USS Kitty Hawk. And this second link that I've included in the chat actually shows what happened on his tough night. And he had a lot of the same kinds of problems and more with the pitching carrier deck. And although it rarely happens, it does happen enough where it is noteworthy. In fact, when I went into the fleet, they told me that there would probably be 2 major mishaps, and one would probably result in the death of an aviator or 2. And it's the cost of doing business. When he had his mishap, the F-14 ended up hitting the ramp. It's called a ramp strike, and it broke the aircraft in half. Fortunately, both were able to successfully eject. The operations officer, who was in the back seat, that I had recommended to be in the back seat, he was in the back seat at the time of the accident. He ended up landing. The parachute went back on the flight deck. He landed on the tail of a S-3 Viking and broke his ankle, but was otherwise okay. Unfortunately for the pilot, his parachute went up and came right back down into the fireball that he had just left with the ejection. And I will tell you that it was a 19-year-old seaman to the flames and grabbed his parachute shroud and pulled him out of that burning inferno. And I always tell that story. He got a Navy Cross out of it, but we send very young men and women out to these aircraft carriers, and it is literally the most dangerous place on earth. And the amount of intestinal fortitude it took for that guy to know, I've got some flame retardant stuff on, but not enough to handle this. I certainly don't have anything to protect my face. I'm going to go in anyway, and I'm going to save this guy because I saw him land in that fireball. That was quite an impressive feat that night. Fortunately, the pilot was able to get through with some third-degree burns on his neck. His face mask and his visor and his helmet protected most of his face and head. And we fly in a Nomex flight suit, so fortunately he had no burns on his body, but it looked like he'd been melted, kind of like a candle on his neck and some other areas. But fortunately for him, he never flew carrier aviation again, but I believe he ended up flying another aircraft in the Navy and eventually went into the airlines and has had a great career there as well.
Wow, what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. What is it, a foot stomper?
A foot stomper.
Foot stomper, yeah, that's definitely a foot stomper. We're going to take a look at the video. I just want to say hello to Roland Friedel, who is in Portugal, rolling in his motorhome. Thank you for watching. He writes, hello, everyone, and wishing you a happy New Year 2023. I also want to say hello to Pastor Stephen, who's joining us from Uganda. Thanks for being here. Okay, we're going to take a look at the video. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, can you see this?
I can.
Okay, and before I play this, I want to give credit to Lee Smith, who is the one who posted this. The title is F-14 Tomcat Ejection VF-51 on the USS Ranger. Let's take a look.
So if you're looking at these crosshatches, you're actually seeing the airplane come into the flight deck. On speed is good. Being in the middle of those crosshairs is obviously good. So this was a good approach. Everything looked good. Caught the wire, and here's where the problem began. The wire stopped. And those two little flashes you saw were the ejection. The airplane is now in the water. I'm literally on the left side watching that ejection. They landed in the water, and the helicopters scooped them up, and they were flying the next day. But this is business as usual in the U.S. Navy aircraft carriers. This is just how it is.
Lightning acknowledged.
Wow.
So,
Lightning acknowledged. Acknowledged.
what you're hearing on the radio there is Lightning is the helicopter. The air boss is saying, get these guys out of the water, get them back on the carrier. So that's it.
So get out and get back on.
Get them in the helicopter, land them on the aircraft carrier, and get them ready for the next day. $40 million down the tube, but we got to keep the flight schedule going.
And sometimes even when you eject, you're not back in the air immediately because it's a jolt. There's nothing soft about it. If you're not prepared, it can in fact do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
What type of assistance is there mental health wise? Because I would think there's a lot of anxiety and stress that is built up thinking about getting into and doing it again.
Well, to be honest, there's a little bit of machismo about the whole industry, and seeking that kind of assistance is, unfortunately, it's considered a sign of weakness, and that's unfortunate. I think with the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, that has started to break down a little bit, but it's certainly, at the time I was going through, no one would ever go and talk about how it made them feel. You just have your nightmares and get over it. And that's unfortunately kind of the way it was back then. But I will give a shout out to the VA. They have a lot of ways that they're helping people through some of these difficult things that they've had to live through. Obviously, folks that are on the ground that have been, kicking in doors and fighting through house clearing events in Afghanistan and Iraq, they have it a lot worse than I ever had. And those folks are getting some help. But I have to say, and this will be my other foot stomper, a lot of people don't realize that the kind of emotional scars that are created, and I'm glad you mentioned it because it is so important. These emotional scars get carried with people, that gets internalized, and because a lot of times they don't really know how to deal with it, they'll sometimes turn to drugs or alcohol to help make that pain go away. And usually as a result of that choice, it ends up bad. And in fact, there's a saying that on average, 22 vets will commit suicide every day. And that is already, if you add up those numbers, it's far greater than the number of people that were actually killed in combat. And that is a horrifying statistic, but it's true. And that's why I would encourage anybody that cares about this topic, I would encourage them to consider the PTSD Foundation, ptsd.org. It would be a great way to help these people get off the street and into a facility that would allow them to turn their lives around and become productive members of the civilian side of the society.
Thank you for sharing that information. And it sounds like while you're serving your country, you just put your head down and keep going. And then when you get out and you realize everything that you've been through, that's when it starts to set in. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And a lot of times these wounds are deep and permanent, and all you can do is try to mitigate them on the outside after you're out. And making that adjustment is very difficult. A lot of marriages are ruined, not because of a lack of love, but because the person has become so difficult and unstable in civilian life. Because essentially, when you're in combat, you're doing some pretty tough things and making tough decisions about who lives and who dies. And a lot of people have emotional scars that are nothing to be ashamed of, but they carry it with them, and how they deal with it, we're just not equipped as humans to really deal with that. If you have any kind of stable being or, a conscience and a soul, and most of us do, but unfortunately, psychopaths deal with it a lot better than the rest of us. But that's a true point that you make.
Lenny, you've shared so much information that's really interesting and relevant, and things I haven't heard about before. So I thank you for that. And I know there's a number of other topics that you can speak on as well. So we'd love to have you come back and talk about leadership and some of your other areas of expertise. What's the best way for people to reach you, and who would you like to contact you?
Well, anybody that would like to either talk about getting their son or daughter into an RTC scholarship, or anybody that is interested in a startup business. I'm actually right in the middle of starting up a business myself, so I'm doing a lot of learning. But I would encourage people to really look at the kinds of shows that are on right now with this, as well as any other YouTube resources that they can receive. That would probably be my fourth foot stomper, is that you need to really use this wonderful medium that has been provided to us. And it is absolutely the best kinds of education that you can get. If you're learning for the first time how to start a business or anything that you want to accomplish, you can now pretty much learn about it on YouTube. Saying this as somebody who's got a master's degree and gone through the educational system, I have learned more from videos on YouTube or iPods or podcasts than I ever have at a university. And that's the truth. Practical knowledge that is actually helpful. So that is, the people that are watching this already understand this intuitively, but you need to share this knowledge with people that are maybe contemplating, do I want to spend $250,000 on an education at a 4-year institution? Or do I want to maybe take that money, hold on to it, and live my life in a more frugal way, maybe a 2-year education and a practical trade? I will tell you, in the neighborhood I live in, the people that are living as millionaires are plumbers and electricians that started their own business, and they don't have a college education. That is something we hear about, dirty jobs with Roe and the rest of them. I would say those are really true. If you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you want to succeed, it is not necessary for you to get an MBA from a prestigious Ivy League school.
I love that. Thank you. And you just gave me an idea for another show. Everything I didn't learn in school.
That's right.
There's so many things that we're not taught in school. It's amazing.
That's right.
But what's the best way to contact you?
So you can reach me by email at lenny@lennymore.net. I don't know if phone numbers are okay here, but I'm happy to give it.
Sure.
Okay. 281-570-7735. I'll put that in the chat.
Thanks.
But that's my direct line.
Okay, for those people who are audio only, Lenny is Lenny at Lenny Moore, which is LENNYMOORE.net. So for
Yes,
Lenny,
.net.
LennyMoore.net, for those people who are not on the video portion of this broadcast.
Thank you very much. And Lenny, I'm going to spotlight you again as we close out the year 2022. What do you want to share with our audience? Some type of inspiration or hope?
Well, I'm actually living the difficulty of starting a business right now. But I will tell you, again, things I've picked up just on watching YouTube videos is that it is very important that if you have an ambition, that you take little steps towards making that happen. It's too much to contemplate. I'll just tell you, I'm actually opening a truck parking lot, essentially, near I-37. And it's an underserved area. It's relatively profitable. It's a great way for me to utilize some land that I own. But I want to tell you that getting this thing started, there are so many things to think about. And as a rank novice, I knew nothing. But again, I went onto YouTube and I let people teach me that are already in the business. What are the things you need to think about? What do you want to put in a contract? What do you want to do for security? All the things you would ever imagine opening a business, it's all discussed there. And you can really get the mentorship with somebody who's already been there and done that you wouldn't otherwise get. Obviously, having a mentor that has done that would be the very best outcome, and I encourage anybody to do that. But absent that, YouTube can be a great surrogate. And I'm essentially taking little steps across a broad spectrum of things that I've learned on YouTube on how to open this business. And it's like Michael Jordan says, you miss every shot you never take.
Very well said. And congratulations. I've never heard of this type of business before, and it's obviously very well needed. So I wish you all the success in the world. And come back and tell us how it's going.
I sure will.
All right. Thanks again. We have your phone number up here as well as your email address. And I will just ask our audience, as I always do, please contact Lenny. He's giving you his information. He wants to help you. He is a wealth of information as well and has an open heart. So please do reach out to him. And thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. And if I could just say one more shout out for my friend Red. My wife had breast cancer. He was instrumental in helping her get the right nutrition to help get through that. And she did not follow all the protocols that were recommended to her. We really listened to what Red said about getting nutrition right, getting the sugar out of your diet primarily. But he really did help us. And, she hasn't had a reoccurrence. We're now almost 17 years since. And I really encourage you to listen to Red and take his nutritional advice. It's the best advice you can possibly get. So I'm very encouraged that Red is doing this for everybody.
Well, congratulations to you and your wife also. And Red, round of applause.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Very much, sir. Lenny, I appreciate your very kind words. And I look forward to you joining us again sometime in 2023 if the stars align correctly, because we still have one more video and we haven't even talked about the solar industry that I thought we'd touch on today. So,
well, let's make it another part 2.
I'd love to have you come back.
Yeah, please do come back and see us.
Great. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful new year. Take care.
Happy
you too.
New Year.
Bye-bye.
Red, can you please share what you'll be discussing in the Talking Heads episode that's coming up right after this show?
We're talking about health hacks. What are those little things you can do to make your life better? Some things you know about, some things you may not know about. But there are things that we can do, just little incremental things. They don't cost much. They don't take much time. But they do take a little bit of consistency in order to make them work. And so we'll be looking at various things that you can incorporate into your life, your lifestyle during 2023. You can even start them this afternoon. But these are things that are going to help you, whether you're in great health right now, they will improve, or whether your health is somewhat compromised. There are things you can still do that most people don't even think about. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. What are the health hacks that you need to make 2023 a better, healthier life for yourself?
Fantastic. And Red, how can people reach out to you?
The easiest way is through my website, redolaughlin.com. That's R-E-D, like the color. O'Laughlin spelled O-L-A-U-G-H-L-I-N. It's redolaughlin.com. And in my banner, my email address, his phone number, all that stuff is there. I prefer voice, Zoom, and email. Texting me, I don't respond as quickly. Not sure why. Just one of those things I haven't adapted to yet. But if you call me on the phone, But you call me on the phone, I'm generally pretty good about answering it. Emails I check quite often. So that's the best way to reach me is email or voicemail. And if you want to set up a session for Zoom, we can do that easily. So thank you very much, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you so much. I'm just laughing because I always text Red, and I know he likes email. I text him anyway.
Well, the phone's there, and I know I can see it, but I don't have a dinger that goes off. When I had the dinger, it's going ding, 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 and it just got aggravating. I said, no more. And so I don't think about it. They come in. Oh, well, that was last night. I should have checked it earlier. And so I'm not as I mean, yes, I get the email, the text, but I don't respond in as timely a manner as if somebody just calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, Red, this is, whoever." And that's the easiest way because generally speaking, I answer the phone. If it's something that I can handle right then and there over the phone, great. If not, let's set up some time that we both agree to, and we'll get together and chat about things.
It's so funny. I appreciate how we're all different. I never, ever have my phone on. Literally, it's never the ringer. I mean, the ringer's never on, and I never answer the phone. But I answer texts and emails and Messenger and WhatsApp. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to let you get over to the other studio to get ready for your talking head session, and I'll close out this show.
I thank you so very much, and we will catch you very, very shortly. Wow, 5 minutes. I got to get my running shoes on.
All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Catch you later.
And to each and every one of you out there, thank you so much, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. We really do appreciate everyone. We are truly global, so much so that we are redoing our introduction, the introduction that you see, because we have a global audience. We want to recognize people around the world who are watching and people who are listening on our radio channels and our podcast stations as well. If you are interested in being a guest on any of our shows, it's so easy. Just go over to our YouTube channel and you can see the shows that we have. You can make a decision. I want to be on this one or that one. Go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com, and book your session. Our show will be the same time, the same channel, the same day for the wise ones next year. We have about 25 different broadcasts each week. So we have something for everyone. Plus we have new shows that we are adding, and we are looking for people who want to join our team. If you're interested, again, go over to our website, which is usaglobaltv.com. Contact us. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Lenny. And thanks to each and every one of you. Happy holidays. Stay tuned. Stay where you are so that you can see Red's episode. Red has helped me so much with my health. And you heard that he helped Lenny's wife. He helped his own wife. So there are so many things that he has to share as a longevity strategist. We want you to take advantage of that. Again, people are here giving their time, their expertise, their education to help you, inspire you, and bring hope. Why not incorporate that into your life starting right now? Thanks again. God bless you all, and we will see you shortly.